So good morning.
But we didn't do roll call.
So I represent.
We gotta open the meeting and roll call.
Frank, hold on just one second. We've got to convene the meeting. Good morning, everyone. Turn off your phones, please. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Bell.
Here.
Curran.
Here.
Freeling.
Present.
Harrison.
Here.
Hinkleman. Majerick.
Here.
Meeks.
Here.
Scott.
Here.
Ballrap.
Here.
Werfel.
Here.
Yarborough.
Present.
Elliott.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have 12 present.
Great. Glad to have everybody together. And Frank, before you begin, you're welcome to join us in singing Happy Birthday to Commissioner Volrath. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear David. Happy birthday to you. Woo!
Yeah, I sing it.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Dave. This is how I want to sing it to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. That's Stevie Wonder.
All right, Frank, follow that act.
There you go.
So good morning. Represent Eau Claire, and this is an annexation request. Now, unlike other requests, this just goes to you. It doesn't go to the State Boundary Commission. You're the deciding body for this request. So this came about because AEP decided to locate a substation on this property here. And they built it, it's there if you drive to. So obviously it's, kind of right up against the building, and see it when you drive in now. So they're stuck with it one way or the other visually, it's kind of part of the community now. For good or for bad, obviously everybody likes power, so we understand. But on the other hand, public services that they need in the future, whether it's fire or public safety or whatever. So Mr. Glassman talked and we decided to make this request of the county. There is actually another parcel, kind of an odd shape, that goes back to here, and then it has a very small skinny alley that comes up. So we had to include this parcel too, because as you know, whenever you annex or request to annex property, it has to be contiguous. There can't be a space, between the two properties. So we had to include both parcels here, which is what we did. So we went out, we got it surveyed, had Whiteman do this drawing. The legal descriptions are in your file. So we have legal descriptions from the surveyor. They're not, we didn't make them up or anything. They're from the surveyor. And so it's parcel A and B on this drawing. Eau Claire is not a rich community. I mean, it's not got a big budget. So every piece of property, its economic base is important for this small town. The economies of scale don't serve the village well because it's very small. So today we're requesting that you approve this request. We think it's pretty straightforward. The township, Pipestone, looked at this and they approved it too. So you have approved minutes somewhere in your files from Pipestone Township where they're going along with this request. So we think it's pretty straightforward, but I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have. Does anyone have any questions? And if you do approve it, either your council can prepare an order or I can prepare an order and provide it to your council for review, along with the other necessary documents.
Mamie, did you have a question?
Yes. So is I&M okay with this? Is the city of Eau Claire, is it so they can collect taxes? Is that what I read? It's something about
That's one reason.
I&M. Yeah, help me to
And
understand
Offer
it.
Our services to them. I'm the president of Eau Claire and I've been for just a few years trying to save it. My 91-year-old mother wanted me to go in there and close the doors because we're a unique little village where Pipestone Township is on the north and Berry Township's on the south. And she said, why do we need a third tax? let's just eliminate it. But when I went into the people said, no, let's not walk out, let's try to save it. But, you know, our tax base, because Harding left, the bank left. And then
Yeah.
we got the school and churches, well, they're at a zero tax base. So when AEP came knocking on our door, we said, well, you want to be part of the village, we'll just let you be part of the village.
Okay,
So that's why I'm here today. They were the ones that came to us, and, I mean, it now looks like it's like a Walmart parking lot. I mean, it's lit up, which is fine, but to answer your question, yes, revenues is what keeps our doors open.
okay,
And I've got the township, the Pipestone Township, they made an article that said they approved it, and just going forward. As far as AEP, I mean,
yeah, that's business. Thank you.
by their actions, they want to be. Okay.
John?
I'm in strong support of this. It's my district, and so I think it's good for everybody. Pipestone agrees, you know, Claire agrees, everybody's in on this. I have no problem and strongly support it. The one thing I would like to find out though is when Mr. DeFrancisco talked about preparing a document, whatever we can do to expedite it, to keep as much expense away from them than on the county, whether he does it, whatever that takes, however we can be of service that way. I'd like to make sure that that's how we do it, to keep as much of the financial burden from you on this as much as we can, so.
Okay, and I know you've already done a petition, and that petition incorporates the legal description and so forth. And my hunch is that's on someone's computer and can be refashioned as an order approving. But happy to have Thaddeus lend a hand and lighten the financial load on the village, if that's okay with everyone.
Appreciate it, thank you kindly. Because when I came in and they said, you know, you've got this $350,000 unfunded pension, I said, what? I don't know whoever intended this, you know, you work somewhere 20 years, but you can collect for 40 years. That's another, I'm sorry, I get off. So I'm trying to correct it going forward.
Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, very good. We aren't voting now. It's on the agenda for the 10:30 meeting. It's the resolution ending in 306. And we'll give it due consideration in about hour and 45 minutes or so. And I don't anticipate a problem, but can't speak for the board. So
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
thank you. Let's go back to the agenda and pick up some things that normally we would have already done. We did our roll call, but we need to approve the minutes of the committee of the whole from last week. Is there a motion to do that?
I'll support that.
Moved by Volrath, supported by Scott. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Those minutes are approved. Annette, if this is a good time for you, we'll review requisitions.
Sure. Does anybody have any questions about the resolution? Yes.
You had said something in there about, you were thinking about adding stuff to the resolution or the requisitions that came out of finance.
So they're already on the list, I put them in italics, and it says pending finance committee approval. So if finance committee does not approve those, then today I will change that form and change the dollar amount on the resolution. And then I'm gonna move that forward.
All right, just point of order, Mr. Chair, should we then, because those are waiting, there's a few of those that are waiting for the finance, maybe we should hold off on requisitions and bring it up during the regular agenda to approve? I don't know.
What's the pleasure of the finance committee?
I normally just, yeah, you
I would be-
Yeah.
pass around.
I would be fine
Yeah.
signing them.
Yeah, I think we'll probably sign them, but I check with,
Voted on now, or we would approve the requisition at
We're
the
not
next meeting
voting.
anyway?
No, we're not voting now. It'll be,
Right.
it's review right now, and then later this morning, we'd be voting on.
So that makes sense.
So, yeah, I mean, it's
So vote
It's
about
review now.
10:30.
but yeah,
fine. I was just making
No, I
that point.
appreciate it. I
Yep.
mean, this is the time, if anybody has a question, we could pull it, get more information in advance of the 10:30 meeting,
Yeah,
so.
Okay.
So I'll just wait to pass around, have you sign it. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's fine. We're not gonna, the signing doesn't make it official, the
Right, I know.
approval of the resolution does, but yeah,
But I mean, it says, save it from doing it
Sure.
twice if I have to.
right. Is that okay with the 4 finance committee members?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions on resolutions? All right, hearing none, then we'll go to public comments.
Sorry, can I
Yeah.
one more thing?
Okay.
I apologize. The MAC legislative conference, I passed out the agenda to all of you. You may have received that in your emails already. I actually didn't get it, but Brian did, so I saw it that way. And then Commissioner Warfel sent it to me as well.
Oh.
So the way that this works is if you'd like to attend this conference, you let me know. We do that as a group registration from the county. That way it has to go through our accounting system and all of that. So just, give me a yes, I'm going or whatever, and then we'll take your answers from then, and then just prior to that, I will give you the packets that you'll need to go to it.
You see, it's March 21st to the 23rd.
It's a Monday.
Be a great time to have a conference in Tampa
Right? That's what I
instead.
Mr. Chair, so moved.
Yeah. I think we'd have very good attendance. Okay, so anybody who wants to go, let Annette know well in advance. Public comments, and I'll note that if you want to make a comment about the Eau Claire annexation, don't do it now because you'll get to do it at 10:30. We're going to have a public hearing. And public comment is provided specifically for that purpose. But if you have something else you want to talk about, you have 2 minutes. Going once, going twice. Public comment is closed. Brian.
Yeah, so Dan's going to walk you all through this presentation. Pay attention to the presentation. We are trying to bring forward an ARPA application. That application is in front of each of you. The application authorizing resolution is on today's agenda. I did see a note from one of the commissioners asking that it be pulled from consent just to allow discussion to occur at today's meeting. I'm thinking that as we get through today's presentation, that we'll likely address most of the questions, but that's the goal here is just to try and make sure that we're addressing any questions or concerns from all of you. So as Dan references the application file, just know that it's in front of you, and we can get copies to anyone who requests. Dan, you ready?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Before I jump into this, just to give you kind of a broad overview, everyone's aware, we have 29 million and change in ARPA funds. We have to have those committed by December of 2024. We have to have them expended by December of 2026. Many of the activities for which we might spend this money will take time to prepare, bid out, design, things like this. So the clock is kind of ticking. It's not that we need to be in a rush, but it's ticking a little bit to get this committed. And we're well aware that the commissioners are still considering various funding categories and various opportunities to expend the money, and that with any hope, there'll be some consensus here in the coming weeks on how the money should be spent. But it appears to us, at least, that there is some consensus amongst the board that broadband is a priority for the community, funding broadband, which is one of the eligible expenditures of this. So Brian did ask that we prepare kind of an application process whereby communities can apply for our share of our ARPA funds to help defray the cost of deploying broadband in their unserved or underserved areas. So that's kind of broadly where we are right now. And with that, I'll kind of walk you through, this is like a refresher course a little bit on ARPA and then some of the considerations that we have moving forward. So we're expected to receive 29,796,000. We've already gotten the first tranche of that, which is a little over 14 million. You'll recall that the law itself provides for 4 kind of categories of eligible uses. One is to respond to or mitigate public health emergencies, respect COVID, or to respond to the negative economic impacts of the pandemic, including providing assistance to households, small businesses, nonprofits,
or aid to impacted industries. This could also be aid to local governments as well. We could provide government services to the extent of a reduction in revenue due to the pandemic health emergency. That really, the way to read that provision is we have our lost revenue calculations. We can take that money right off the top, stick it into our general fund, so to speak, and use that money to continue to provide ongoing government services. I'm going to talk a little bit about that because there's been some changes in this recently. We can use the money to make necessary investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. The word necessary becomes kind of critical there, and Treasury has provided some guidance on what that means. And we can also respond to workers performing essential work during the public health emergency by providing premium pay to eligible workers that are performing such essential work. And you notice there are some key words here, right? Premium pay, eligible workers, essential work. If it's a determination of the county to move forward with that, there are some strict limitations on how we provide premium pay. I haven't included all of that in this presentation, but that could be a discussion for a later time. State and local governments can transfer funds to private nonprofit organizations, public benefit corporations involved in transportation, or special purpose units of the state or local government. These would like your Brownfield Authority or other special purpose units. The Treasury has clarified that that transfer of funds also applies to local municipalities. We can transfer the money direct to our local municipalities if we choose to. Such cases, the transferee may expend the transferred funds to respond to and mitigate negative economic impacts. They have to basically follow the same rules we do because they are a recipient of our funds. Ineligible uses, states are not allowed to use the funds to directly or indirectly offset a reduction in net tax revenue that results from a change in law. In other words, if a tax cut is pushed through, they can't use the revenue to boost their general fund balance to offset a tax cut that they gave. And that kind of makes sense, I think. In absolutely no circumstance can we deposit any of these funds into a pension fund. Unfortunately, we were thinking that might be a nice way to shore up one of our long-term liabilities, but that is now not allowable, and Treasury has clarified that explicitly. And local governments, including counties that fail to comply with federal law or related guidelines, are going to have to repay these funds. We're aware of that. There's a risk associated here. All right, as I said, the deadline to commit these funds is December 31st, 2024. We have to expend them by December 31st, 2026. We have to report on the categories of expenditures. We have periodic reporting requirements detailing the accounting and the use of the funds that has to be consistent with something called 2 CFR Part 200. As Thaddeus reminded me today, it is Part 200. And that's what we refer to as the general guidance for the management of federal awards. For background, that provision of the Code of Federal Regulations, we have already adopted that in the county's grant management policy. We adhere to these provisions on the use of all of our grant funds, federal or otherwise. So this is something we're familiar with having to comply with. Again, any entity that doesn't comply with these provisions will have to repay the U.S. Treasury the amount of funds that was managed inappropriately. Yes.
And just a quick question on that last part.
Yeah.
If we give a particular municipality X amount of dollars to use for broadband expansion.
Yep.
And they do not use it all the way like they're supposed to, date wise and everything. We need clarification. Are they responsible or are we responsible?
Hold your
Because
horses.
okay, never mind.
It's in. I got it in here. You jumped ahead of me a little bit. Okay. All right. So broadly speaking, the way to kind of conceptually understand this is we really have two pots or basically buckets of money that we can deal with. We can deal with our lost revenue and our internal pandemic costs, and we can draw this money into our lost revenue and internal pandemic costs. And then we also have uses for external community projects or needs. In all instances, our uses have to be consistent with the eligible use requirements of the Act that are elaborated upon in the Treasury rule that was just adopted. And that provides some real elaboration on kind of these broad categories. And in all instances, the uses have to be consistent with the requirements of the uniform guidance, and this would be procurement principles, cost principles, monitoring and reporting. Ezra, to your point, these requirements apply both to the primary recipient, Berrien County, and any sub-recipients that are receiving grants from or transfers from Berrien County. In other words, if we give them the money, they have to comply with all the requirements, as do we, which means we have to monitor their use of the money on an ongoing basis to make sure that they're using it consistent with the regulations that apply to us, okay? Yes.
Next question. I believe the way the county government is set up, we as county board are not able to tell or influence any municipality in any of their ordinance decisions or finances or anything. So where does that put us in this?
Well, to jump ahead, what we'll do.
I'm sorry, I'll just let you
Yeah.
continue.
No, I mean, the simple, I'll get to it, but I'll tell you right now, the simple way to do this is if you decide to transfer or sub-grant this money to a municipality, it'll be done so under a grant contract that'll spell out specifically what the terms and expectations and responsibilities of the municipality will be. If they don't want to abide by those, they won't sign the grant contract. So that'll all be taken care of in the drafting of these contracts.
Last week, Administrator Dissett was saying we need an application,
Mhm.
and I thought it was a general application. Are we going to take things, where's Brian?
I'll tell you
Are
what,
we
can you-
going to take things piece by piece?
Can we
and
hold
make
on for a
an
second? Because I'm
application?
gonna address that specifically here, okay?
Okay, because that's what I wonder
Yeah, it
about,
just-
because,
I
This
know
side
that,
of the board jumps ahead.
yeah, no, that's okay, because this is kind of boring, and, you know, this is long-winded, I get it, you want to get to the meat of
no,
the
I
issue, but
want
let
you to
me,
do all.
let me get through this, and we're gonna talk about how the application process could work or how it's envisioned, okay?
Okay,
All right, so. So we have, on the lost revenue side, Treasury's given us an equation that we use to calculate our revenues, our lost revenues. Originally, we were expecting our lost revenues in 2020 to be around 4.4 million, but they adjusted some of the factors in that calculation and recalculated, and it now looks like our lost revenue is 6.3 million, just for 2020 alone. We expect that to be more or less consistent in 2021, 22, and 23. These are the years that we can capture lost revenue. So we believe that just the county's lost revenue amount that we can take in and spend on general county activities is going to be somewhere around 20 to 22 million out of this 29 million. We can use this for capital needs or operational needs that are associated with providing ongoing services. We can't use it to create new services that aren't associated to pandemic response activities. But we can, if we decide that we have capital needs that are necessary to continue the provisioning of ongoing services, we can use it for that and for operational purposes. We can't use it in our pension, as I said earlier. And examples of eligible uses of lost revenue would be buildings and facilities, you know, roadways, public safety needs, public health needs, parks, and so forth. It's pretty broad in what we can do with it. This is where we're really heading towards now. We can sub-grant to municipalities and nonprofits for any eligible use. The final rule from Treasury does provide numerous examples of community projects that meet the criteria of responding or mitigating to a public health emergency. It also provides clear guidance on the types of projects that qualify as necessary investments in water, sewer, and broadband. And typically that necessary is based on whether or not you're serving an unserved or underserved area. There's some definitions of what that is, but you're basically supposed to be providing this new infrastructure areas that have been excluded from these services in the past. Okay, so here we go. We understand that you're currently debating and discussing how you want to allocate this money, both internally and to external projects. It's our sense that there's a consensus that broadband is a high priority in the community, particularly in those areas that either don't have access or are underserved. We don't know exactly what our lost revenue will be. We can estimate it, but our concern is if we start transferring large amounts of this ARPA revenue without calculating our lost revenue right away, we may essentially give away more than we really should because we're entitled to a large portion of this internally. But there are, we know, broadband projects that are actually shovel ready right now and could fill in the gaps of broadband coverage in Berrien County within a very short period of time if they had additional funding. And you can think about the MEC projects that are going on right now, where it would be a very easy effort for a local community to pay for extensions of that project into their own community. So we're suggesting that the board circulate an application specifically to communities to apply for ARPA subgrants to support local broadband projects. As the board comes to consensus on other areas of priority and funding, we can develop applications for those areas as well, modeled principally on the applications that we've already developed. But what we're suggesting is not delay the broadband application process right now, because we have these projects ready to go. We don't want to miss the opportunity of achieving some economy of scale by tying these communities onto these larger ISP projects that are occurring. If you were to do this, successful community projects are going to need to demonstrate that the broadband that they are helping to construct will result in minimum high-speed service and provide access that's commensurate with something called the Affordable Connectivity Program. And this is actually in the application, we spell this out. The applicant has to demonstrate that they have experience in managing federal funds and that they have the capacity to ensure compliance with all of the uniform guidance, the 2 CFR Part 200, that the applicant will comply with all monitoring that we have to do on their behalf and with them, and all auditing, including, if necessary, a single audit compliance. Remember, any municipality that receives more than $750,000 from the feds has to perform a single audit, and that could be triggered by this. And that the subgranted funds can be formally committed by December 31st and expended 2024 and expended no later than the 31st of 2026. Once a determination of award is made by the board, we will then have them execute the subgrant agreement and a monitoring agreement that will provide us with the opportunity, Ezra, to go in there and basically instruct them how to spend the funds. We are actually preparing those model sub-agreements right now. We'll have those in Thaddeus's hands in a week or two. And we're preparing the monitoring agreements also. And these are based on subgrant monitoring agreements that we've operated under when we've received federal funds. To assist these subgrant recipients, we're also preparing a monitoring handbook that lays out the principles of how to procure services, how to expend the money, how to account for it, financial management, reporting compliances, and so forth. We also anticipate that staff is going to have to provide a high level of technical support to some of the communities that receive this money, and we're prepared to do that. So then the final consideration, if the board decides to move forward with this recommendation, the consideration would be, how do you actually grade the applications that you're about to receive? We have some suggestions on a scoring process if you wanted to go that direction, but we are recommending that you impanel some kind of review group consisting of commissioners and some staff that can at least be there to provide technical advice on financial management of federal funds and so forth. So that's where we are. I know there's probably a lot of questions and I have skipped over some important information, but I'm happy to answer anything that anyone has.
As far as how we go about providing technical advice to the other municipalities, all right, your staff, how general do you plan on doing that?
Well, this is what I envision is the same way that, say, the feds treat us when we take our money, which is that we sign these grant agreements and then they provide a list of documentation that we have to submit on a routine or periodic basis. And only after that information has been reviewed and certified by the feds will they release the funds to us. So the grant will essentially be a drawdown process where we say you have to do these following things, incur certain costs, clear those costs with us first, and after we're satisfied that you've complied with all these requirements, we will release the funds on that draw. And that's generally how we do it with any federal or pass-through grant that we receive. I don't have any concern about our capacity to do that because we've managed, tens of millions of dollars of federal grants before.
I just envision some hand holding. That's got to take place.
A lot of hand holding.
It's got to take place. And so my 2 cents would be that whatever protocol we've got as a staff, we're going to have to make sure that hand holding takes place because it's going to take that. you'd hate somebody to go down the rabbit hole with a project, thinking that they're in compliance the whole way, and then finding somewhere down there that they missed the boat on something. So
That's exactly by what we would have is our staff basically pre-certifying all the work that's done.
all right.
Just as a follow-up to that, the reality is if the Board of Commissioners say proceed with the application, allowing for broadband applications to come in, the bulk of the applicants that we are likely to see will be applicants that are within the MEC construction area running along that eastern edge of the county. Several of the applicants are likely to be pretty rural townships with limited staff and limited past experience working through federal grants. We know full well there's going to have to be some handholding to help them. We'll likely have to help them with the application. We will likely have to encourage them to submit their application. And then there's going to be a lot of time between staff and those township governments, helping them to understand exactly what they're agreeing to, and then helping them understand the bidding requirements, and then helping them get the construction underway. Now, with that said, if we don't do this, MEC is constructing along that eastern edge. And if the county and the townships aren't working together, that project by MEC will be completed, and there will be gaps left within a variety of these townships where they will remain unserved for rural broadband. And this is one of those rare moments of we have federal dollars here. We have a private ISP building. They will be using federal dollars that they've collected to build their planned route, but they are not going to go further into the townships than what they have funding for. So it would be a real shame in 2 years if we have gaps in the townships where we're turning money back in, where the ISP has completed their project and they're not coming back. This is one of those moments where we really can get a fix done and improve the quality of the residential life, commercial life, as well as farming life.
Probably the best thing is best cost also.
Absolutely.
Mamie.
Yes. Have we approved this
No, ma'am.
as a board?
No, ma'am.
Okay,
It's before
and
you
then the
today.
next thing that I need cleared up, I thought there was going to be federal dollars, not the 29 million that we have, but other dollars for broadband. So are we talking about this money or the other broadband money? That's what I want to know.
So ma'am, that is an excellent question. And the crystal ball that I'm looking at says there are likely to be multiple funding sources for broadband, for road building, for recreation projects. Unfortunately, the ARPA funds have a timeline. We have to have these spent at the end of 2024. Give or take, we've got a couple of years to get this spent. The rollout of the federal infrastructure bill will not be fully completed as we are drawing down these funds. Unfortunately, there was just delays at the federal level to roll these dollars out. Last week, we sat through a lengthy webinar led by Senator Stabenow's office, and the funds are coming. But for any of the townships that are desirous of working with MEC while they're on site, those federal dollars will not be opened and available quickly enough for them to take advantage of having a contractor already within their township. Now, the townships will have to go through a bidding process. The townships will have to determine who is the best equipped to build within their township. But the reality is that there is a relatively local provider who is already building in the bulk of the townships on the eastern edge of the county. And it's not going to be cheaper than it is right now to construct additional line miles. So to back up to your point, no, you have not approved the application. And yes, there is the potential of other layers of federal funding for broadband and other services. Unfortunately, those pots of money have not yet opened. They are coming, but they are not here today. Does that address your question, ma'am?
Yes, and the one thing, is it only for a specific area?
No,
When you're
No.
saying township and rural and,
No, there are RDOF funded projects on the eastern edge as well as on the western edge of the county. By no means are we saying that the middle of the county, the northern, and the southern parts of the county can't
They're
apply.
not eligible.
Our hope is that we will be bringing multiple rounds of applications forward to the board to consider. This would be the first, and it is specifically targeting broadband construction. ARPA allows for other types of partnering opportunities, from water, wastewater to green infrastructure. Potentially other projects are out there that aren't even on our radar. What we're trying to do as staff is create a little bit of momentum, allowing local units to start submitting their applications that are focused on broadband, so that they can take advantage of a contractor already being in their area, and they can take advantage of what is absolutely a fundable allowance under the ARPA.
Okay, I only have one more thing. The communities have money also?
Yes. So
Okay,
the communities receive the ARPA funds, they also have whatever funds sit within their general fund. And the communities make the choice. Do they wish to seek a partnership with the county, or do they have something else that they want to do? We can't force them. We certainly aren't going to try to get them to do something they don't want to do. But I guarantee you, if you say yes today on the ARPA application, we'll have at least one application in by tomorrow.
Mac,
thank
Jim
you.
first.
Jim, go ahead.
Thank you, Mac. This particular application is on the agenda for the 10:30 meeting for approval. This is specifically is for broadband.
Yes.
Do you intend to bring to us another generic application, or are they gonna be specific applications?
We
for
haven't made a
sewer
determination about
projects,
that
water
yet.
projects?
Jim, we don't know yet, because what we're seeing as these rules are being developed is that if we don't specify the type of project that we're inviting an application for, we're gonna run into federal regulatory rules that are either applicable or not applicable with the project. A good example is this one, specifically in there says you have to demonstrate compliance with these minimum speed standards. Treasury has a rule that says all ARPA funded broadband has to comply with this standard. They also have a rule that says all ARPA funded water projects have to comply with a certain standard. So I think we're gonna probably wind up writing applications for all the categories of possible funding, because otherwise it'll be this generic application that is just a recitation of rules that are inapplicable to the project. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and what's your timeline on that? I realize we're doing this one
Well,
today.
we don't know, and we're waiting for the board to give us the direction of what the priorities are. And once we know what the priorities are, we will draft the applications to meet those priorities.
And to follow up on that statement, we are trying to move forward on the broadband side because we know that we have townships that are desirous of submitting an application. And we also know that there is broadband construction slated to occur this year. We don't know if any local units will submit applications for water sewer issues, for housing, for small business recovery. We don't know. But we know that every day of the week broadband aligns with the language within the ARPA. And moreover, we know that we are very near completion of our analysis of our buildings, grounds issues. We'll be bringing that forward to the board for a very lengthy presentation within the coming weeks. We'll then take that study and tie bar it to your strategic plan so that you all have a very clear understanding of this is everything that we should be focused on fixing. As that number gets higher and higher, the availability of grantable funds is likely to get lower and lower. So our ability to take on major water, sewer, street projects, it's likely going to go down and further as you all have a chance to review the Adam Marsh Pearson reports. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, and my last question is, because there's a lot of accountability here, I know most grants, they write in administration costs
Oh,
for
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Can the
Oh, yeah,
locals do that?
Yeah,
Or
don't
can we
worry. I
do
mean,
that to reimburse ourselves?
Yeah, we're tracking our time on this. Definitely.
Okay, good.
And we
Thank
will, I
you.
mean, they're allowable. The treasury rule is quite clear that those costs are acceptable and allowable, and we are tracking them, and there will be a lot of time
Okay,
recovery.
double speed, Bob, Julie Ezra, it's already 9:15.
So quick, if you need to add staff because of the volume of applications and the complexity, that would be an allowable cost.
Absolutely. I don't think we will, but if we did, yeah.
Julie, did, oh, okay, Ezra.
had a question.
Okay,
I-
Ezra and then Mike.
I would just like to make a comment mostly for Mamie, what you had asked about the grant funding for broadband. Terry and I have been dealing with this now going on years. And what we have found out is depending on rules and regulations, do not absolutely count on this broadband money coming later on this infrastructure bill, because we have found out that if you accept certain grant money from certain federal agencies, then devoids you of accepting grant money for broadband from the state and vice versa. So just because it says that it's broadband money doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be eligible for it. I just wanted to clarify that. And the other thing I wanted to know was a question on the presentation. Maybe the corporate counsel can chime in on this or think about it, but if there is a federal audit for those municipalities, because we have got this money that we are giving to the townships or municipalities, that they are responsible to pay for said audit?
We'll roll it into their grant agreement.
Thank you. That's all I have.
We
Thank you.
already considered that because it could trigger a cost that they weren't expecting, so we'll roll it into their grant.
Right, but we've audited our departments in that before, and
Yeah,
and
that's
I'm just
that's
like,
fine.
you
If
know,
somebody,
why?
say someone wants 750,000 and it's gonna cost another 10,000 to do their audit, we'll
Right.
give them 760.
That was my only point. Thank you.
Okay, Michael, Terry, and then anything else at 10:30.
But my question just on roadways. What's the criteria for building streets? Because I'm on the Nats committee.
Well, we'll have to
Could
talk
go
about that in
through-
more detail with you later on. Generally speaking, we cannot use this money to build roads unless we're using our lost revenue to do that. So it would have to be a county road that we were working on.
Yeah.
Okay. Never mind. Yeah.
Terry?
Thank you. I just wanted to take the time to thank staff for putting this together, moving this forward. I think this is a great opportunity for us to do a pilot in the funding in an area that this board has continuously expressed interest in, and that's broadband. In 2019, we did it as one of our strategic objectives of talking about improving connectivity within Berrien County. We did a survey. We've seen that there's 60% of our population that needs better connectivity. The final rules that came out for this funding is very specific of how we can achieve that. And so those are the guide rails that we will have in front of us that staff is baking into the handbook that they're going to put forward. So I'm very much interested in moving this forward at 10:30. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say, I am not against the broadband. I think with what has happened with us with the COVID and all, we know how important it is. And I think especially for our students and all of that. But I don't want us to put money on top of that. It's coming from somewhere else. And that's why I ask all those questions.
Thank you.
Thank
30
you.
seconds, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
In 30 seconds, just a quick statement of appreciation. Dan, Thaddeus, in the last week, these two watched the board meeting, they watched the discussion. And what you just saw, I can't tell you how many times Dan has revised that as they prepped to get ready for today. The application in front of you has 5, 6 revisions. Working with Thaddeus, working with public sector consultants, they have really focused on delivering you a product today that is ready, has been beat up by legal review, beat up by outside consulting review. And they've really done a whole lot of work in a short period of time to get this thing ready for you. So I enjoy working with these two, but I am incredibly impressed by what has occurred this week. So just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. Well done, gentlemen. We'll be back at 10:30.